last summer, before the US rolled out certain industrial policies, rare earths were sitting at about $54 a kilogram. The reality is, if prices stayed below $60, the majority of projects outside of China would have had to close because they were uneconomic. So what the US government did is they put in a price floor at $110. And they said, okay, if it falls below $110 and what the actual price is, the US government will essentially make a quarterly payment for the delta, right? Which at the time was almost double of the price that it actually was. Why are prices low? This is a structural problem, because price support or price floors are a time-bound temporary mechanism. The reason we need a price floor is because supply is higher than demand, right? And as the US and as the West, we can bring more projects online. We can bring more supply online. But if supply continues to outstrip demand, that means that prices will stay low. And these industries are uneconomic without government support. So the only way to restore market equilibrium in a way that these projects can stay economic and stay online and stay long-term viable, right, is to increase demand. And there's a variety of ways to increase demand. The first one, which, we struggle with in the US and in the current policy environment, is electric vehicles are incredibly important. And it doesn't have to be on the grounds of climate change. But a conventional gasoline-powered vehicle uses 32 kilograms of critical minerals. An EV uses 210. That is a 6-fold increase in critical minerals, including rare earths, right? If we increase the demand for EVs, we're going to use a lot more rare earths. Those prices are going to go up, and it's going to give investors the confidence in making that multi-billion-dollar investment that needs to be made. So we have to increase demand, and that's not going to be through the defense sector alone, because defense is a relatively stable industry from a demand perspective. It's not a huge market. So we're going to have to think about those other industries and how to increase demand if we want to be economic outside of China.
So really, what you're saying is that the electrification of life generally is a really crucial issue, and that the consumer aspects of this rather than defense aspects are what will drive the market in the future. Is that a correct conclusion?
Absolutely. If you look at the majority of minerals that we identify as critical beyond rare earths, the defense industry uses less than 0.5%. It is a very small off-taker, right? We only build so many satellites and a couple of F-35s, and drones are actually not that material intensive because they're so small. That is not the driver of demand. The driver of demand is going to be energy, right? Energy resilient. So that's going to be transmission, which is something like copper. That's going to be solar panels, wind. I mean, these are the drivers. And when you also think about going back to frontier markets, I mean, I've got 600 million people in Africa who don't have access to energy, right? The amount of electrification that's going to grow in these jurisdictions is going to be really critical. So that is going to be the future of critical mineral demand. So while defense is arguably the most important industry, nobody is going to build a multi-billion-dollar mine and processing facility for that 0.5% of offtake.
And I want to come back to talk more about the frontier markets, the great games playing out on those, but just stopping for a moment and kind of digesting what we've been speaking about with regards to the timeline that US has to catch up to China, the length of time these projects take, but also this interesting supply and demand side equation you've got going on. Because if we were to increase, for example, the electrification of vehicles and encourage more EV usage, does